And in week 3, we began to focus on early theories of crime. We'll start in the classical school, but certainly theories of crime existed before the classical school, but they were pretty simplistic. They were demonic possession, for example. The classical school of criminology believed that persons are rational, intelligent beings who can exercise free will, and therefore criminal behavior is a choice. Because criminal behavior is a choice, it means that people are determining that the benefits of crime outweigh the costs of crime. And so people like Cesare Beccaria and Jeremy Bentham said that we need to make sure that we have a codified set of laws that dictate the types of punishment individuals will experience if they violate those laws. That will make sure that the benefits of committing crime no longer outweigh the cost of committing crime. Bentham was also not just saying we'll make crime so serious that nobody will commit an offense. Proportionality of punishment was necessary so that people would believe in the system in the first place. But basically the classical school said that all people are equal, all people have free will. And that was something that the positivist school kind of disagreed with. They kind of said that no, lots of people are different, and there will be different reasons for why people engage in crime. So the key principle of positivist criminology is that only that which is observable through the scientific method is knowable. So keep in mind that this is a principle. When we look at the work of Lombroso or Goddard, we can see that their scientific method was very, very rudimentary. They were much more ideological than scientific. So they're kind of using science as masquerading in science, when really they were using sort of science to hide their ideological perspective. And so Lombroso, for example, focused on the born criminal, the idea that physical features of convicted criminals was evidence of a biological explanation of crime. The problem with Lombroso is that he never used comparison groups, for example. So he never really got to look at the physical features of non-convicted criminals to see if the physical features differed between those who were actually convicted of crimes. We talked about Henry Goddard when we looked at the Kallikak family, and he kind of argued, if we look at Kallikak and we look at his offspring from the barmaid and the offspring from his wife, the offspring of his wife are much more well-to-do than those of the barmaid, and therefore there's a genetic effect of crime, and that's why we should conduct this eugenics movement. And we know this was complete garbage science because there were a wealth of socioeconomic factors, for example, that could be impacting the children of the barmaid, but those were never taken into consideration. If you were doing positivist methodology correctly, you would be doing or considering those factors. So it's more just like this. These were some ideas, but they weren't really carried out in practice. Other things that Lombroso focused on specifically were phrenology, or the shape of a person's head. And he studied persons in custody to identify the atavistic man, which is an important term. It's referring to an offender as an evolutionary throwback or someone who has not fully evolved. Sheldon tried to look specifically at something very easily measurable, which was somebody's body type, but he presumed that body type wasn't just a measure of physical attributes, it was also a measure of personality attributes. So, for example, for the ectomorph, it wasn't just that they were skinny, it was that being skinny would be associated with personality characteristics like being withdrawn or timid, and that's why they would not be involved in crime. Similarly, the endomorph, by being obtuse, they were more likely to be outgoing and jolly, like a Santa Claus, and that's why they would not be involved in crime. And the mesomorph was muscular, and that's why they would be aggressive, and that's why they wouldn't be involved in crime. Family studies are useful in some ways. For example, we can look at how criminality is more common in some families than others. We can also see how criminality by the mother can have a stronger influence on future criminality of their offspring than criminality by the father. But this might speak more to, for example, the fact that mothers are more likely to raise their children and so more likely to have an influence on their children. These findings cannot then be used to make a claim about a genetic effect. So we cannot say that criminality within the family is due to genetic makeup, because that family might be experiencing the same environmental factors as well. And those environmental factors shared by that family might be the reason why they commit crime. So a way around this to deal with the environmental component is to conduct twin studies of monozygotic twins and dizygotic twins. Monozygotic twins are those who are 100% identical in their DNA, whereas dizygotic twins are no more genetically similar than two siblings of different ages. But dizygotic twins are different from siblings of different ages because dizygotic twins are likely to be raised in the exact, or at least a very similar environment. So when we look at dizygotic twins and monozygotic twins, each twin pair is being raised in the same environment. So if we see a stronger concordance in criminal behavior amongst monozygotic twins compared to dizygotic twins, those who advocate for twin studies say that that's an indication of a genetic effect. I wouldn't really call what Freud did a criminological theory. Freud never really even talked about crime, but he did develop ideas that were influential in criminological theories down the road. So Freud distinguished between three key elements of personality or consciousness. The first is the id. It describes how we seek immediate pleasure, these hedonistic drives or instincts. The ego is our reality-oriented thinking, like being rational about the situations that we're in. And our superego is our conscience, and it's required to sort of internalize society's standards, and then it's been used to regulate the id. And so what happens is if we have an underdeveloped superego, it won't be able to appropriately regulate the id, and then people will just do whatever they want to do as opposed to whatever they ought to do. And this is what could lead to criminal behavior. Look, again, Freud didn't really say specifically crime. Problems with the development of superego are related to poor parenting and trauma. Then we also have some early sociological perspectives. One was developed by Merton, and he talked a lot about modes of adaptation. This is describing people who will accept the means associated with conventional society and accept the goals or experience the goals of conventional society. So means equal work hard and honestly, goal equals buy a house with a white picket fence, etc., etc. Conformists are people who accept the means and achieve the goals. People who are innovators, they reject the means, but they still accept the goals. So this could be somebody involved in, for example, drug trafficking, where they want to use the money earned from drug trafficking and spend that money on conventional goals like getting a house. We could see individuals who are associated with rebellion. And this is where instead of rejecting the means and rejecting the goals, they'll actually kind of be like anarchists and they want to replace the means and replace the goals. So they want to see sort of like a fundamental shift in conventional society. One of the other groups would be the retreatists, who effectively experience a rejection of the means and a rejection of the goals. And then ritualists are those who accept the means but are unable to attain the goals. And this is something that can create strain, and that could also lead to crime. So the failure to attain goals could lead to using criminal behavior as a way to cope or express your needs. Shaw and McKay, we kind of saw them earlier. They developed concentric zone theory, so that idea of the zone in transition, where individuals in this particular area will have more of a difficulty with things like unemployment, people moving in and out of that neighborhood, and that will result in higher crime rates. So this is more of a perspective on why rates of crime are higher as opposed to why particular people engage in crime. And they use social disorganization theory to sort of help explain why crime is higher in the zone in transition. So social disorganization theory says that there are three reasons why crime rates will be higher. The first is a lack of collective efficacy. Collective efficacy is useful for like communities to organize, rally together to set up neighborhood block watches, things like that. Another factor is what they refer to as like ethnic or cultural heterogeneity. They believe that greater levels of diversity would result in different cultural values, people not necessarily watching out for one another, and that could lead to higher levels of crime. And finally, the third factor is residential mobility. So higher levels of neighborhood turnover, like more people moving in and out of those neighborhoods, would result in more crime because you won't necessarily know your neighbors and have people watching out for you. Differential association theory in Edwin Sutherland is maybe one of the more like famous sociological theories only simply argued that individuals will engage in crime if they are exposed to other people, especially those people who they care about, who experience positive rewards from their criminal behavior. So they learn their criminal behavior by watching others. Sykes and Matza talked about techniques of neutralization. For example, they would talk about for gang members an appeal to higher loyalties. Like, I'm not really responsible for my behavior because I was doing it on behalf of the gang.